What's going on, guys? If you've been watching tennis on TV, there is this young gentleman by the name of Carlos Alcaraz. Pretty good tennis player, and you can't help but notice that he wins an awful lot of points with drop shots. So we want to help you learn how to hit an unbelievable drop shot. We also want to make sure you're doing it at the right time, because just because this superhero on TV seems to hit a lot of drop shot winners does not mean that it's always the right time to do this. So today we're going to talk about how, and most importantly, when to hit perfect drop shot winners.
That's right. It's ironic because just 3 years ago, Mats Wilander came out and said the drop shot was the plague of professional tennis. It was being overused, and you can overuse it. But situationally, it can be a great tool to keep your opponent off balance, especially if you have a big forehand.
For sure.
And that's the issue with Carlos. He has a massive, massive forehand. I mean, his whole game's big, but the forehand is one of the biggest we've seen. And then he takes the air out from you with the drop shot. Hard to guess for both. So let's jump into it. We're going to show you step one on how to hit a great drop shot. So step one on having a really good drop shot is all about disguise, right? You've got to sell it. You've got to make sure they think you're doing anything but a drop shot. Now, this is a lot easier on the backhand side, especially for players that slice a lot, because if I'm already in my continental grip and they don't know whether I'm hitting a slice drive or hitting the drop shot, I keep them guessing. There's no grip change or anything else. But a lot of times a player's kind of spidey sense goes off when they play a player that's hitting a ton of slice. And that's also because players that play with a lot of feel, that use backspin, typically mix up the depth already relatively well. Now, if you're coming over the backhand, especially with the two-hander, from here it gets a little bit more difficult. But what you want to do is take the racket back as if you're getting ready to come through the ball. You're going to drive it with topspin, and then slide the top hand up. Now, my bottom hand is already in a continental grip for most two-handers. Some of you will be variations of that. But that can also change as you slide the hand up. It can move the bevel a little bit. With the one-hander, kind of the same thing. Your hand is already on the throat. Make that grip change and work through it. So the backhand is where we're going to see most drop shots occur and oftentimes have the most success. Now, Alcaraz he uses the backhand, but where his drop shot is the most deadly is on the forehand side. So on the forehand side, what he's doing, he takes the racket back and then he's switching the grip to continental. And he's sometimes doing this actually in the shot to where he's making the change and then playing the drop shot from there. So he's actually changing the grip with the dominant hand. Sometimes, however, it's premeditated. If he sees his opponent back up, or if he's hit a ball that's backed him up from the ready position, he's switching to the continental grip. Continental grip is a must-have. And then from here, selling it as if he's getting ready to drive, and then he's playing with the drop shot. All right, so next up, we got to talk about positioning. So the big rule of positioning is making sure you're inside the court. Don't try to hit drop shots when you're behind the baseline. This means a lot of times the ball is already high. It's extremely difficult to hit a successful drop shot behind the baseline. So make sure you've already won the battle of positioning, that you're in an offensive position. So now, where Carlos hits his drop shot, the reason it's so particularly deadly is because when he sets up for his inside in, inside out forehand, simply just means as a righty, he's left of center. And now when he is going to hit his forehand, the opponent has to guess. If he goes inside in and attacks down the line, right, he can then play the volley into the open court, or he can set up and trap the opponent's backhand or play behind them. It puts the opponent in a position to where they have to guess which of these two things happen. But when you add a third tangible, the drop shot, now they don't know what to do. And this is the spot we see Carlos having his most success. He sets up. If the player starts to bite towards the deuce court or they back up, he then plays the drop shot. All right, now this keeps them off balance throughout the duration of the match. If they back up to defend the pace, they're susceptible to the drop shot. If they play forward to defend the drop shot, they get beat by the pace. Now, the one thing I will tell you is that in positioning, you want to make sure that you're hitting the drop shot that creates the furthest distance from your opponent. So for example, if my opponent is on the ad court and I drop shot to the ad court, they have a straight line to run to it. That's not advantageous. I want to make sure they're running the farthest distance possible to make it more difficult.
The third secret to a successful drop shot, and this is going to surprise a lot of you guys, is actually height. I think a lot of us think we've got to lace a really low drop shot tight over the net into a narrow window, and that's not true. You can hit the ball high over the net as long as you have backspin on it and it's landing short, right? You don't want that ball to bounce and continue towards your opponent or continue on. If that ball, the higher it goes, the less it proceeds in the court. So if I do this on an angle, and when the ball bounces, it's bouncing off the court away from my opponent, I've got lots of margin for error and it's a great drop shot. Height is totally fine as long as I've got some backspin on it and it's bending off the court away from my opponent. The last piece here that we need to think about for a successful drop shot is just soft hands. And what I'm talking about here is two things. It's grip tension and it's just the concept of creating a soft surface for the ball to bounce off of, right? If you're trying to hit a drop volley, if you're trying to hit a drop shot and you squeeze your racket really tight, you're creating a firm surface like a brick wall where that ball is going to bounce off and there's no touch, there's no backspin. So you want to hold your racket, and you've heard me say this in other tips, like you're holding a baby bird. You don't want the bird to fly away, but you don't want to kill the little fella, so you're just squeezing gently. You're creating a pillow-like surface with your racket strings for the ball to bounce off of, rather than creating that brick wall. That's how you're going to develop the feel and generate a better drop shot.
All right, so now that you know how to hit the drop shot, when to hit the drop shot, it's time to practice it. And so we've linked below a video where Scott and I are playing mini tennis, and this is all about using slice. The key here is that the ball has to have the ability to bounce twice in the service box in order to be a winner. Watch the video to get the full description, but I promise you, there's a reason that you see juniors hitting such good drop shots. It's because they play games such as these mini tennis games when they have free time. Before they get out to the baseline and start sparring and blasting the ball, they play touch games up towards the net. So make sure you watch that video.
That's right, guys. There's more to understanding this. You've got to go practice it. You've got to develop the feel. So you need some drills to really figure out how to get the reps in and get this in your quiver. You need the drop shot. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care, everyone.